Outside my hotel here in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, there are palm trees planted in the pavement. Beneath them are said to be the remains of people. There are many such trees in the towns of Cambodia, under which have been discovered human fertilizer. They are monuments to a regime of fanatics called the Khmer Rouge, led by an Asian Hitler called Pol Pot and underwritten by the government of China. Last year, I reported from Cambodia in a documentary called Year Zero, and your response to that film was nothing less than historic. Following its showing throughout the world, some £19 million was raised in relief for Cambodia, much of it from those of you who could least afford to give, who gave up pensions, family allowances, life savings, holiday money, pocket money, dole money. The film you're about to see will show what your compassion and generosity have achieved. It will also show, in the first report both from here in Cambodia and the camps in Thailand, why this suffering nation is being kept in shadow, isolated by power politics, why its future and survival are still very much in question, and why the most thorough mass murderers in memory are being actively sustained by the United Nations and by Western governments. But first, in the hope that it will never be forgotten, let me remind you of what was done to the people of Cambodia.
My sister with her husband and 6 children were killed. My brother, my older brother, one younger brother, and 2 brother-in-laws were killed.
My wife, my son, my daughter, anything we go.
They were killed?
They killed. We have only my child, only one.
How many children were killed?
5.
5 children?
5 children. Yeah.
How were they killed?
He don't give to any to eat.
I see, they starved.
2 months anything with anything. No rice, no soup, no anything.
What was done has no parallel in modern times. Not even Hitler's demonry included the enslavement of the entire population and the systematic slaughter of many of those touched by the 20th century. Doctors, teachers, technicians, skilled workers, anyone who knew foreigners or a foreign language. Not even Stalin's terror included the emptying of cities and towns, the Luddite destruction of machines, telephones and hospital equipment, the banning of money and of all learning, books and art, and the abolition of the family and of all expressions of joy, love and grief. That is what happened in Cambodia from April 1975, Year Zero in the calendar of Pol Pot's regime. If you want to live, the Khmer Rouge told townspeople who were marched at gunpoint into the countryside, you must surround yourselves with silence, hear nothing, know nothing, understand nothing. The horror began, of course, before Pol Pot. Cambodia's peace and fragile neutrality were destroyed in 1970 by a secret war launched by President Nixon and Dr. Kissinger in violation of American law and in defiance of Congress. By 1973, American bombers had dropped the equivalent of 5 Hiroshimas on Cambodia. Out of this inferno came Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, whose forest revolution exploited the devastation. A civil war began, resulting in 1 million dead and wounded. The ideology of the Khmer Rouge was based on the Cultural Revolution unleashed by Mao Zedong in China in the 1960s, whose aim was a return to the politically pure, self-supporting life of a docile peasantry. To this, the Khmer Rouge added a medieval bloodletting and created Auschwitz in Asia. Here at one extermination camp, more than 12,000 people were tortured and murdered by a Gestapo called S-21. Like the Nazis, the Khmer Rouge photographed their victims Before and after, they hanged them, strangled them, disemboweled them, electrocuted them, and cut their throats. The arrival of the Vietnamese in December 1978 put an end to this genocide. For the first 9 months of 1979, the only substantial relief reaching Cambodia, as well as practical help to rebuild the country, came from Vietnam, itself on the edge of famine. But in the absence of a major international relief operation, starvation spread like fire. This is Cambodia almost 1 year later, a nation transformed from a charnel house and its landscape of famine to the beginnings of normality and a demonstration of human resilience which none of us had expected. So that the assessments in this second report would have the widest possible base, I asked 2 French doctors who were here in the summer of 1979 to return with us. Also, one of the most experienced and respected relief agency firemen, Jim Howard, who began the Cambodia relief operation for Oxfam.
One is in the business in Oxfam of being in the tragedy world, and one sees an enormous amount of heartbreaking situations, but I don't think one has ever seen this situation. It was even beyond a war situation, and we've experienced those situations before. But here was a society that had basically destroyed itself. It had destroyed all its intelligentsia and the rest. It smashed all the links of a human society. What we saw were just disparate people, small groups of people moving around this country, starving mostly, with no organization, no proper sequence of events taking place, except this government here trying to grapple, a new government trying to grapple with those sort of human needs.
Jim, the response to the tragedy in Cambodia, particularly in Britain, was extraordinary.
Oh, surely. I mean, I think that the response itself, we've never seen such response, and I think this was because it touched the very depths of human compassion and human giving and human caring, really, that response. And I mean, that was unprecedented, even for us. But we've seen that aid come in all shapes and forms, from everything from pencils to footballs to food to seed to hose, everything. And we've seen an incredibly marked change for the better over these past months. Trucks, of course, have come in of foodstuffs and seeds, and there has been a substantial and a remarkable, one would nearly say a miraculous change of events.
From a city which last year stood virtually silent and still, as if in the wake of a nuclear war, Phnom Penh today has more than 100,000 people. Markets, schools, hospitals, traffic, 2 bus routes, telephones, electricity. The postal service has been reopened and a currency has been reintroduced. There is uncoerced labor, freedom of movement and freedom of worship. And there are weddings by the score, and a football team, and a jazz band. The city has a supply of fresh water again, thanks to British money and the work of a British engineer. A pharmaceuticals factory is opened, which means that ready-made drugs such as penicillin need not be imported. Some of the raw materials used to get this factory working were purchased by the 2 French doctors who were here with us last year, with money given by the viewers of Year Zero. The generosity of the British people has literally put colour back into people's lives. With the money sent to us by viewers following last year's report, Oxfam were able to reopen this textile factory, and this meant that people could shed the hated black uniforms which the Khmer Rouge had forced them to wear. £30,000 worth of dyes came from Britain, 280 tons of cotton yarn, 60,000 knitting needles, producing 60 different designs. When we passed your money to the relief agencies last year, we insisted that it went to actual projects, and this is but one of them. More than 300 people are employed in this textile factory, most of them widows who have lost almost all their immediate families. These are people who ask for nothing, and what has been given them is not foreign aid with strings, nor charity with dependents, but something which has complemented their remarkable resilience. In these streets last year were little phantoms, mostly orphan children, using worthless banknotes as fuel and eating a gruel of roots and plants. We tried then to avoid a sound which seemed to pursue us. It was the sound of children in great distress, of which no description is appropriate. Now that has gone. The streets are bustling. There is no starvation. Last year at this hospital at Kampong Spur, disease and starvation were rampant. Doctors Vino and Folazu were with us then and have returned with us.
We are very surprised by the very low rate of severe malnutrition.
Very low rate of severe malnutrition. When we were all in this hospital last year, there was malnutrition everywhere, extreme starvation.
Of course. We had got, I wouldn't say 100, but tens of beds with children. We were like skeleton, you remember. And we don't see this anymore.
Last May, there were many cases of plague on the anthrax. In August, I had not seen plague.
No more plague.
But there are many anthrax.
You remember we saw 7 cases of anthrax.
Now there is no plague, no anthrax.
You were saying this child is a representative case and perhaps represents the improvements in the hospital here.
Yes.
What is wrong with this baby?
The improvement and the problems.
Right.
In fact, this little boy is 9 months old, and he has come for gastroenterite, diarrhea, for the last month. He has got also conjunctivitis. It doesn't look very anemic, in fact. It's a question of infectious gastroenteric disease, in fact.
Will he survive?
Yes,
no problem.
There's a lot more equipment in this hospital. At this hospital, people were sleeping on the floor, and it was really a wretched place. Now, there's a lot more equipment.
You see, now there are beds.
In all the room.
There are beds first. Second, there are drugs. They've got good quantities of antibiotics.
Where are they coming from, mainly?
They are coming mainly from 2 sources. One source is Soviet Union, and the other half is coming from the pharmaceutical laboratories of Phnom Penh. Well, I think we mustn't be too optimistic, but anyway, a lot of people thought that Khmer people was going to disappear, and we've got the proof here that all women are not sterile, and that things are going on.
There was not maternity such like now.
These are all newborn babies, and they all seem to be in
Very good form.
very good form.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's have a look at some of the others.
Yes. All the 7 babies here are in very good form.
Yes. Look at these twins here. Aren't they beautiful?
Yes.
I'm told their sister's 6 days old. Are they okay?
Yes, they're okay. They are very small because they are twins, and it's more difficult to get twins than only one baby, but they are in good health.
I find it remarkable in this hospital, which was just a house of death when we were here in August, to see these sights of children like this.
Oh, we are very happy. In May last year, it was veritably hell here. Veritably hell. And now the improvement is very important, and it's very optimistic. But surely there remain many problems.
These problems would daunt the most advanced nation, and Cambodia's isolated government consists mainly of survivors of the middle class, anyone with a skill, and they are making some extraordinary progress. Indeed, our journey this time produced many delightful surprises. These are some of the children that we filmed last year in an orphanage in Phnom Penh. Some of you may recall the little child at the end of the film with flies on her face who was very, very ill indeed. This is her now. Her name is Ban, and she's growing into a healthy little girl. This is Ok. Okay. Ok, when we last saw him, was spread-eagled on a bed, thin, malnourished, very close to death. And look at him now. Look at that wonderful pot tummy. People who think they can never help children that they see in a film like ours should look at these healthy children and know that the mosquito nets and the drugs and many of the things that have helped them grow into the bonny children they're becoming were sent by them and paid for by their money, including the toys and the footballs and all the other things that are now starting to make their life livable. How about that, Ok? Last year at this school, there were 50 sick and hungry children crammed into a pig pen. There are now more than 2,000 children here in hot pursuit of a cheated childhood. And there are desks, paper, pencils, toys, much of it paid for in Britain. There are now more than 900,000 children in makeshift schools throughout Cambodia, as many of the original buildings were destroyed by the Khmer Rouge. Ian Hopwood of the United Nations Children's Fund said many of the 19,000 teachers have never taught before, but the government has begun a 2-month crash course. They're doing the same with doctors and nurses, and it's working. Jim, can you, here in Phnom Penh, succinctly reply to months of criticism that supplies are being misappropriated, that the stuff is just simply not getting through to the people who need it most?
These supplies, all the supplies we've been put in, we have seen no misuse whatsoever. There are hang-ups certainly on transportation, on some of the general red tape that exists around all structures and all situations.
Yeah.
But we've seen no misuse, John, at all. And we're very pleased with this operation, considering where we started 7 or 8 months ago. We were at a total standstill, as you know, this country.
This rice seed is now going into the ground for a harvest later in the year.
About December time, that's right.
And in the meantime, the country is, I think, has eaten the last harvest, and it's back to full dependency.
That's right. But you see, every bag of that will grow 20, 30 or 40, 50 bags of rice. This is the magic about rice seed. So you get this marvelous return.
How many barges have we had up to date? And
This is our 20th. Each barge brings up between 1,500 and 2,000 tons.
Unannounced, we followed the seed from this barge to the railway yards at Phnom Penh, where it was loaded onto a train for Battambang, 350 miles to the northwest. Until the December harvest, Cambodia is completely dependent on foreign relief, and the government has clearly taken a gamble by giving priority to seed over food, which has been rationed and stored. This has drawn criticism from some foreign relief officials who worry about pockets of malnutrition in the countryside, where food distribution has been sporadic. Oxfam's chief in Phnom Penh, Bill Yates, said, "Everyone who needs to work and has no source of food, from nurses to bridge repairers, is getting rations." As for the countryside, the government has trusted in the peasants' natural instinct to live off the land. And certainly all the villages I have seen have plots of maize, corn, sugarcane and fruit. They are gambling to achieve self-sufficiency, and it may well be paying off. But the problems and dangers that lie ahead cannot be minimized. A great many people, mainly children, remain too close to the edge of famine, and until Cambodia's political and diplomatic isolation is ended, it cannot be legally offered a United Nations plan of reconstruction, and the future of a society whose very fabric is unraveled will remain in doubt. These thin children in Battambang railway yards are clearly at risk. Here they collect the sweepings of rice seed, and perhaps just one epidemic would decimate them. Dominic Defoe, head of the Red Cross in Phnom Penh, said, "Food is being stockpiled because these people have had nothing for so long, and because they can never be sure how the international winds will blow and if Western aid will be cut off." In Cambodia today, the past seems to hover like a spoiler of the present. This is the city of Battambang, and these Chinese earth movers were used to dig mass graves. Cambodia's much-loved singer, Sin Sisamuth, was brought here from Phnom Penh and forced to stand at his own graveside and to sing the Khmer Rouge anthem, which is all about blood and carnage. Then he was beaten to death. Outside Cambodia in the west, memories of such horrors are fading almost as quickly as the Khmer Rouge is mounting a public relations campaign to change their image. And they are having some success. Not far from here, close to the Thai border, a man called Khieu Samphan, the so-called Prime Minister of Pol Pot's Democratic Kampuchea, entertains the foreign press with much food and whiskey. His defunct government controls no national territory, except a few border enclaves, but it's recognized by the United Nations. One British correspondent found him to be a youthful, sturdy man with a ready smile, who wished to clear away the past, and said, "My government's future policy is to work for freedom for my people to choose a government of any ideology, communist, capitalist, or middle of the road." The reporter might well have been interviewing Adolf Hitler about his plans for a Fourth Reich. Khieu Samphan, who enjoys this kind of so-called objective interview, was the Khmer Rouge leader whose theories were most responsible for the Nazi-like perversions against his people. In this village, no family has lost fewer than 6 members, starved or murdered by the Khmer Rouge, who made a spectacle of hanging children. Today, many of the farmers trying to lead peaceful lives in this province are terrorized by Khmer Rouge guerrillas as they sow their crops. We were warned that our film team was a Khmer Rouge target, and we narrowly escaped an ambush. The rice seed, which we followed 350 miles from the docks at Phnom Penh, ended up here. From barge to soil took just 3 days, an achievement that does the international agencies in Phnom Penh and the Cambodian government much credit, because it represents the first attempt at self-reliance, for which Cambodia was once renowned in Asia. But this self-reliance is being threatened by the Khmer Rouge, who are being restored and allowed to regroup on the Thai border. I shall report on this in part 2. This is a cockpit of war, Indochina. In February 1979, China attacked Vietnam, which 2 months earlier had freed Cambodia from Pol Pot, who had come to power with Chinese support. In Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge retreated to the western border with Thailand, scorching the earth and taking thousands of starving civilians with them. In camps on the Thai border, the Khmer Rouge were allowed to regroup and together with civilians became the beneficiaries of Western relief sent through Thailand.
Paul, you've seen both sides of the border, here in Cambodia and on the Thai border. What are your feelings about the politics of relief in this area?
Well, I think it's about time that the donor countries, who right now are expressing considerable concern about the operations here, I'm thinking of the States, Britain in particular, start looking at the border operation with in the same rigorous way as they're criticizing operations here. I think what we tend to forget is that there's virtually no monitoring can be done along the border. No American official can get very far into the country. If the border operations are working at their best, they're going to cover about 20% of the country, and that is probably a hypothetical optimum. What I personally suspect, and what I've also heard other agency people say, is that the US government, Morton Abramowitz, anyway, it's the American ambassador in Bangkok, is carrying on keeping up the pressure for political reasons. I'm not certain that their motives are primarily or purely humanitarian. One of the international aid agency people has recently gone into print in an article saying that he felt that the aid operations along the border were a magnet trying to pull people towards the border, an effort to destabilize the province of Battambang, the western province of Kampuchea, and eventually to destabilize this government in Phnom Penh. I personally feel that perhaps people like Abramowitz are trying to refight the Vietnam War. They're trying to get a better result, and they're keeping up their efforts along the border to make sure that the government here has as many problems as possible. By keeping a lot of people moving towards the border, rather than having them stable, growing, the harvest is coming up soon. The planting should be done for the harvest very soon. You're keeping people on the move. You're keeping a disproportionate amount of the population concentrated along the western border.
Across the Thai border into Cambodia have flowed gold, Pepsi Cola, Scotch whiskey, the Khmer Rouge, weapons and low-grade, low-yield rice seed. A UNICEF report dated April the 9th called this seed bad seed because it included sand and husks. The report said non-government agencies tested the seed and found between 30 and 50% rebate. In other words, up to half of it was rubbish and could cause a disastrous harvest. The investigative office of the State Department confirmed this, and yet shipments of the seed continued across the border, paid for by the United States government. This is not in any way to suggest that the relief operation along the Thai border did not save a great many lives last year. But today, international politics and relief in Thailand have become entwined in a familiar circus. This is the town of Aranya Pratet in Thailand, just over the border from Cambodia. It's a cocktail of the Texas frontier and Saigon before it lapsed into communist hands. It has Honduras cowboys, dry martinis, a real estate boom, hamburgers, the CIA, missionaries, shootouts, foreign doctors straight out of MASH, and a market in orphans. It's really an extension of Bangkok, which for many Westerners presents the last perfect vision of Asia. Rows of massage parlors offering everything from children to grandmothers, with VD clinics conveniently next door. Like old Saigon, Thailand is run by a shuffling pack of generals whose economy is underwritten by the US Treasury, and lately by China, a prime source of oil. In the current Cold War, China and the US are allies, and Thailand is one of their proxies, and the Khmer Rouge with havens on the Thai border is another. Last July in Tokyo, President Carter and Chairman Wago Fong issued a statement which said that America and China had agreed on strategic perspectives as they related to Afghanistan and to the Vietnamese invasion of Cambodia. What this new alliance boils down to is that China wants Pol Pot back in power, with a new respectable image, of course, and its traditional foe, Vietnam, subdued, and Vietnam's ally, the Soviet Union, isolated. And America does not wish to displease China, for its current Cold War enemy is also the Soviet Union. The irony is almost sharp. Did not America defend at great cost the massage parlors of Saigon in order to contain China? Of course, in those days, we called it Red China. Inside Thailand, a few miles from the border, is Khao Dung, the biggest Cambodian refugee camp run by the United Nations Commission for Refugees. The population of Khao Dung includes many of those preyed upon by the Khmer Rouge, the skilled, the educated, the survivors of the middle class. The United Nations representative at Khao Dung is Mark Brown. I asked him if the work of the hundreds of foreign charities here was helpful.
It's a context where individually everything that the voluntary agencies do is helpful on the whole. I mean, most of them, come here to provide some basic relief services, some doctoring, some supplementary feeding, and a few even do sanitation and that kind of thing, which I wish there were more who did that. However,
you seem to be inundated by medical teams.
Yeah.
We heard the story of the Italian medical team that had to find work for. And,
yes, that's right. I mean, I've just come to you now, actually, from a quarrel between two medical teams over which of them was going to provide the 4th surgical unit at Khao Dung when there's probably only a need for 2 surgical units. And, I am very fed up of building facilities for doctors rather than refugees here. You've got people here who, in effect, are having to put up with all the basic threats that a refugee faces anywhere in the world, the doubts about their political future, they have barely enough water. We can't be very proud of the amount of food they get enough for life, but no more. And yet at the same time, and quite contradictorily, thousands and thousands of Valium pills are being prescribed every day. I mean, there's this over-medication, there's this sort of element of pampering. There are doctors who come out here for a few months with little experience of tropical medicine or emergency medicine in this context. They're overwhelmed by the emotional experience and encourage the Khmers to think America, to think Europe in terms of their future.
Politically, how important is the border to certain Western interests?
I see the aid officials of governments. They're the ones who come and give me the checks and, come with the rice trucks. Clearly, there are always rumors that there are other more mysterious figures behind the aid officials, but they wisely, with so many journalists around, with so many relief workers around, they keep a pretty low profile.
And they keep that low profile here, in a house close to the border, the operations base of the Kampuchean Emergency Group, or KEG, an arm of the American Embassy in Bangkok.
What's the function of the Kampuchean Emergency Group, KEG, of which you're a member on the border?
We try to do several things. The first is to more or less track the overall situation of the refugees. You have here, at any given time, 150,000 refugees permanently encamped on the border, another 150,000 inside Thailand in holding centers. But particularly for those on the border who are in limbo, in no man's land, literally, and in terms of anybody's protective authority, we're concerned that we have up-to-date information on life-threatening situations that they may face. Our second function has been to try to watch what happens to American funding. 30% of what goes on the border is American funded through UNICEF, ICRC, UNHCR, World Food Program, the 4 involved agencies. And we often have questions about priorities, questions about cost benefits of certain actions. So we've felt that it's useful to have people who know the nitty-gritty of the relief business.
The men of KEG in their unmarked radio-linked cars certainly know the nitty-gritty of Indochina. Jack Williamson advises a special Thai Army unit, Task Force 80, which coordinates refugee camps and Khmer Rouge bases. Task Force 80 is funded directly by the US Embassy. William Shawcross, in his book Sideshow, documents the past work of KEG's director, Colonel Michael Ireland. Ireland was operations chief of a secret special forces group which laid the groundwork for the illegal bombing of Cambodia. These and the 7 others in KEG report to American Ambassador Morton Abramowitz, a Pentagon China specialist appointed by the President's National Security Advisor, Dr. Brzezinski. Brzezinski's strategy is divide and rule, to widen the gap between China and Russia, even if that means backing the Khmer Rouge. Last year, the United States supported a Chinese motion at the UN in favor of Pol Pot representing Cambodia. The Thai border, where the men of KEG operate, is merely the new front line in an old war. The State Department in Washington finally confirmed to us that these men were not aid people, but were a special monitoring force. A senior relief official told us that KEG applied constant pressure to the relief agencies to keep supplying Khmer Rouge bases.
It does seem ironic that the West, and the United States in particular, seems to be supporting the Khmer Rouge.
The comparative weight in terms of feeding effort has been markedly towards the non-Khmer Rouge. The feeling has always been you can't go along the border and say, okay, politically you're excluded, politically you aren't, or you get into all sorts of international political problems, plus considerations of equity of the civilians involved.
The United States government and some of the more conservative, shall we say, American journalists were the first ones to denounce the Pol Pot regime. And I for one, am very disturbed by the silence that they seem to have drawn over the excesses of the Pol Pot regime more recently.
There are several factors that politically are at stake, and there are, of course, a variety of other political factors that impinge on the humanitarian job.
If I go to the American embassy in Bangkok and if I talk to officials there, they couch their arguments in terms of humanitarian concern for the Khmer people. When I talk to aid officials, people who are involved in the border operations or here, I'm beginning to hear more and more often complaints of extremely crude pressure coming from the U.S.
This is Sa Kaeo camp inside Thailand, where the United Nations flag flies, but which in reality is controlled by the Khmer Rouge. They dispense the Western aid that is given to them, and they spread fear by burying people up to their necks. Their leadership of special quarters and their troops have been rested and fattened. At night, their wounded are ferried here by Task Force 80 and treated by foreign medical teams. Since the border relief operation began, it is estimated that Khmer Rouge strength has doubled to 30,000. Last June, in a blaze of public relations, more than 8,000 refugees were repatriated to their homeland. In fact, these so-called refugees all came from this camp. An official of the United Nations, which opposed the repatriation, told us, "We're sending back an entire division of the bastards. This is like a declaration of war." The Bangkok Post reported, "The followers of Pol Pot, who exercises a strong hold over many of the camp's refugees, and who have told interviews that they took part in mass executions, have a ditty they sing to people in order to intimidate them to return and fight. It goes like this. Those of you who go back first will sleep on cots. Those who go back second will sleep on mats. Those who go back third will sleep in mud. Those who go back last will sleep under the ground." Each day, Western missionaries go forth into this Khmer Rouge fortress to inform thousands of opaque eyes that Jesus Christ will save them, if not their victims. Last year, Mrs. Rosalind Carter came here and said America would save them, which was more to the point. These 40 trucks, chartered by the United Nations Children's Fund and the Red Cross, are headed for Nom Chat, just across the border inside Cambodia. They are laden with food, seed and assorted goodies, which is a term the agency people use. Nom Chat is a Khmer Rouge operations base set in forest and bunkers and minefields. It has a Thai liaison officer from Task Force 80 who was not pleased to see us. The agencies trust that these supplies will reach thousands of non-Khmer Rouge civilians. Last month, James Grant, the director of UNICEF, said that relief on the border would continue in situations where assurance can be given by the Thai government that the aid is going only to civilian groups and not to Khmer guerrilla forces. But in Thailand, the agency people say they have no alternative but to give the relief to the Khmer Rouge leadership, and they have no guarantee of what is done with it. How long have you been making this run, Phyllis?
I've recently been coming out more than before because we set up a new system for the staff where, in addition to our regular duties, everyone has specific responsibility for one camp.
Yeah.
And Phnom Shot happens to be my responsibility.
It being a Khmer Rouge camp, how do you feel about those people?
Oh, mixed emotions. Sorry about that, folks. I want a truck to go over here.
Is this all mined along here? Is it?
Yeah. Let's say it's hard to know which is mine and which isn't. And, you know, general policy around here is you don't take a chance. We always position the car so we can get out fast.
This is a caring, worried American lady, Miss Phyllis Gestrin, a psychologist from Texas who works for the United Nations Children's Fund. Phyllis is doing her job here with obvious enthusiasm because she is understandably terrified of those to whom she is delivering the goodies, and she wants to get out very quickly. This relief is being dumped almost literally at the feet of Khmer Rouge leaders who gave Phyllis a receipt. The beneficiaries were clearly not the civilians in the camp who also looked terrified as well as undernourished. By contrast, the Khmer Rouge are well-fed and confident. This camp is run by a man who likes the agency people to call him Monsieur le President. His real name is Nam Phan. He was Pol Pot's governor of Siem Reap province, where last year we filmed mass graves of murdered people. Privately, the aid people call him the Butcher and Pol Pot's Himmler.
Would you ask Monsieur le President how much he has been helped by international relief? Well, which country is helping them most of all at the moment? Countries. That is like Thailand and Singapore.
Yes.
And the United States, does he consider them friendly now?
Both UNICEF and the Red Cross have a genuine dilemma. While they supply the Khmer Rouge, they are regarded by the Phnom Penh government as accessories to a murderous enemy, and their operations based in Phnom Penh are viewed with suspicion. But if the agencies pull out of the border, they fear that their Western funding will dry up. Both agencies are deeply embarrassed by their involvement here, and many of their dedicated officials would prefer that the whole operation was wound down. One of them said angrily, "Look, we're being manipulated by governments, there's nothing we can do about it, but I'm not going to say that to your camera." Another said, "All we're doing is feeding an army." It must be surely one of the supreme ironies of our time that we in the West are using perhaps the most fanatical, extreme left-wing regime, the Nazis of our time, as the proxies in the continuing war in Indochina. The British government has the credit of being the only Western government to have ended its recognition of Pol Pot. And yet we still support Pol Pot through the back door. Last May, the Foreign Office instructed the British delegate to the World Health Authority to vote in favour of the credentials of the Khmer Rouge.
To allow that force to come back in here will be one of the crimes of history. I think the failure of people like myself will be not to point out that that is still an active force in this country. Up on the borders is being encouraged, and if it came back here, we would see more slaughter.
But the slaughter has already begun again. This unique train, having carried seed to the north, returns to Phnom Penh like a human antheap, with at least 5,000 passengers on board, slung in hammocks between the wheels, embracing the funnel, sardined everywhere. It's like a marvelous moving carnival. 2 days later, we returned to film the train again, but it was late. The station master, speaking his first English in 5 years, said, "Sir, my train is late for 2 reasons. First reason, the driver is unfortunately no good. He's learning, you see. Second reason, it is raining cats and frogs." But the train was late for neither of these reasons. It had been ambushed by the Khmer Rouge with rockets and automatic weapons, and more than 150 people had been killed. This teeming market in Phnom Penh represents Cambodia's precarious normality. The West and China want Vietnam to withdraw from Cambodia, but it's patently obvious to those of us who have been here that while Vietnam itself is threatened by China, and while the Khmer Rouge remain a real threat, the Vietnamese will not and cannot leave. Nations survive by the lessons of their history. Before the Vietnamese drove into Cambodia, they offered the Khmer Rouge a demilitarized border with United Nations inspection. They were ignored both by Pol Pot and the United Nations. They now need a way out. In September 1979, as America's UN delegate rose from his seat after voting in favor of Pol Pot, someone grabbed his hand and congratulated him. "I looked up," he said, "and saw it was Ieng Sary, Pol Pot's foreign minister. I felt like washing my hands." This film is really about the courage of the people of Cambodia. They deserve more than cynicism and shame.
The countries of this region have suffered enough. They've been devastated by 30 years of war. I think it's about time we started to look for positive measures to help them instead of denouncing them. We have to look for a détente with Indochina.
There has to be a political way through for this community, for this part of the world, desperately needs peace. It has to have peace.
In New York, an official of Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge lives in luxury in a suite in the Bachman Towers Hotel. Incredibly, he is still Cambodia's representative at the United Nations. This year, the General Assembly of the United Nations will almost certainly vote on whether or not he should retain his seat. If the West supports what President Carter himself has described as the vilest regime in history, there is the real possibility that China, with American approval, will attempt to restore Pol Pot to power under a different name. And that is what the people of Cambodia fear more than anything. It is a fear that runs through every conversation, that haunts almost every face in every crowd. It is a fear greater even than the fear of hunger. Last November in the American Congress, Senator George McGovern said that America's unquestioning alliance with China was forcing Cambodia and Vietnam into a permanent state of siege and a dependency on the Soviet Union, which neither country wants. What they do want, after years of bombs and butchery, is peace. A chance just to be normal, to grow their own food again, to bring up normal, sane children again. Certainly, I find it difficult to cope with the thought that the children in this film may have survived only to suffer war and famine yet again, because your generosity has never been matched by a political generosity from so-called civilized governments.